You ever find yourself wondering, how do my finances really stack up? Against everyone else. Well, today we're pulling back the curtain on the financial reality of the average person. And fair warning, some of these numbers might make you feel pretty good, and some might be a serious wake-up call. So let's just dive in and see where we all stand.
So, as we walk through all this data, try to think about your own situation. This isn't just about satisfying curiosity, okay? We're trying to set a benchmark, a baseline that you can actually use to make smarter calls with your own money.
All right, first up, income, the foundation of everything, right? That number on your paycheck. How does it really compare to what the typical person is bringing home?
According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, here it is, $52,000. That's the median annual income for a full-time individual worker. So, what that means is half of all workers earn more than this and half earn less. It is the dead center of the pack. But, and this is a big but, that's the gross number, before Uncle Sam takes his cut.
And this slide just perfectly illustrates the reality. After federal taxes, state taxes, Social Security, Medicare, poof, that 52 grand shrinks to somewhere between $35,000 and $40,000. That's the actual money people have to work with, to budget with, and that's a super important point to keep in mind as we go forward.
So what are people doing with the money they do get to keep? Well, let's move on to retirement savings and see how that nest egg is building, or in a lot of cases, how it's not. Okay, this one is genuinely shocking. A full 25% of Americans have zero, and I mean $0 saved for retirement. Nothing. Zilch. That's 1 out of every 4 people you meet who are basically banking their entire future on Social Security alone. It's a tough spot to be in.
Now, for the folks who are saving, the numbers are, well, all over the place, depending on age. You can see the balances grow over time, which makes sense. It goes from under $2 grand for the youngest workers to about $88,000 for those over 65. But let's be honest, even for people about to cross the finish line, that number seems surprisingly low.
Let's just focus on that number for a second, $88,000. For someone at or very near retirement, this is the median nest egg they've managed to build over an entire lifetime of working.
So, 88 grand might sound like a decent chunk of change, but what does that actually translate to? What kind of real spendable income can you get from that each month?
Well, if we use the standard 4% withdrawal rule, which is a really common guideline for making your money last through retirement, that $88,000 provides less than $300 a month. Seriously, think about that. Could you live on an extra $300 a month? It's a pretty stark picture of why the average retirement plan is, well, it's falling short.
So if people aren't saving very much, where is all the money going? And that question leads us directly into the trap of spending, and of course the debt that usually comes right along with it. And this slide right here, this shows the fundamental problem perfectly. On the left, you've got the median individual earning $52,000 a year before tax. But on the right, the average household is spending $67,000. You can see the gap right away. For a family with only one income, this is a recipe for falling behind. And when you break it down, the big 3 expenses just devour the average budget. Housing alone is almost $1,900 a month. Then you add in transportation and food, and bam, you're already over $3,000 out the door before you've paid for anything else.
So when you have that gap between what you earn and what you spend, it often gets filled with credit. And this is where things can get really ugly really fast.
The average household is carrying over $9,000 in credit card debt. And remember, this isn't debt for an asset like a house, something that grows in value. This is typically for consumable goods, stuff that's already been used or eaten or worn out. So here's the kicker. The cost of carrying that balance at a pretty standard 20% interest rate, that's $1,800 a year that you're just throwing away. Money that could be building wealth for you is instead just feeding the credit card companies. It's a massive, massive drag on your financial progress. Okay, so we've looked at income, savings, and debt. Let's combine it all into the single best number for measuring your overall financial health, and that's your net worth.
It's actually a pretty simple but powerful formula. You just add up everything you own, your house, your car, bank accounts, investments, and then you subtract everything you owe, your mortgage, car loans, credit card debt, whatever is left over, that's your net worth.
And here's what that scorecard looks like for the average American household. Now, the numbers do grow with age, which you'd expect, but look at them. They're pretty modest. Hitting these kinds of milestones is actually really achievable with just some basic financial discipline.
So what's holding people back? Well, it often comes down to this one little number. The average personal savings rate is just 6%, just 6 cents out of every dollar earned. And with such a tiny amount being set aside, it's really no wonder that net worth growth is so slow for so many.
Now, after all those pretty sobering stats, I've actually got some good news. Because once you see what average really looks like, it becomes incredibly clear how you can do better.
Let's just be honest with ourselves. The typical financial path we've just looked at, it's a raw deal. But here's the hidden opportunity in all this data. The bar for being better than average is surprisingly low. It's totally within your reach.
You don't need some secret formula or a fancy finance degree. Seriously, if you just focus on these 3 things, you will be lapping the competition. Save more than that tiny 6%, get rid of that wealth-destroying credit card debt, and consistently put your money to work. It really is that straightforward.
Look, these statistics show us where the average person ends up. That story is kind of already written, but that story does not have to be your story. These numbers, they're a starting point, not a finish line. The choice of what you do with this information, well, that's entirely up to you.